Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. For those of you who do not know, I was without power for about 9 days because of Hurricane Helene. Luckily, I am back and ready to record on more NBA news. So first of all, thank you for your patience and understanding. And secondly, let's get into some more NBA content. And we've got some news here from Shams Charania today. We got a Sham bomb here, and it's regarding Clippers and forward PJ Tucker, who have had some discontent in recent history. Obviously, going back to last year, it seemed like PJ Tucker was likely going to be traded during the 2024 NBA trade deadline. Now that never actually materialized, but Shams Charania here now reporting the Clippers and forward PJ Tucker have mutually agreed for the 13-year NBA veteran to be away from the team as the sides work toward a resolution for his future. Now, from the thumbnail of today's video, you could probably tell that there's not going to be a lot of interest around the league for PJ Tucker. So this video is going to focus on some potential PJ Tucker trades. And you might be wondering, first of all, who's going to trade for him? Secondly, why would they trade for him? And then the third thing, what did the Clippers even get out of moving him? I think the first thing and the most important thing to look at right now is the list of NBA trade exceptions presently at this point in time. And there are a few that are very important to look for. We're specifically looking for trade exceptions that are larger than $11.5 million, which is what PJ Tucker's contract is this season, the one he opted into in his player option, obviously getting paid quite well. So we're looking for large trade exceptions. The first one I want to point out here is this one that Memphis has, okay? This one right here, from February 2nd, 2024, when they traded Steven Adams. The trade exception lasts a whole year for them, and it's $12.6 million. So this trade exception right here from Memphis is really, really important. That is big enough to harbor in a contract like PJ Tucker's. Another one here, Washington, right before the trade deadline, traded Daniel Gafford to the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, he was a huge factor for the Mavericks making a run to the NBA Finals. The Wizards now have a $12.4 million trade exception. Again, big enough to harbor PJ Tucker's expiring contract. As we scroll down here a little bit more, you're going to see some of these trade exceptions. Teams have multiple of them. Even if you have multiple, you cannot combine them together for a larger player salary. So you cannot aggregate your trade exceptions together. So when you get to a team like Dallas here, yes, they have this $4 million trade exception from sending Seth Curry last deadline. That actually does not play any factor into getting a deal done. But what they do have is this large $16 million trade exception from trading Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Detroit Pistons, opening up, again, more flexibility for Dallas. Now, is Dallas a realistic landing spot for PJ Tucker? Probably not, and we'll talk about that a little bit more why as we get into some of the actual destinations, but it's important to know where these trade exceptions lie, because I'm assuming teams are not going to give up salary or good players for PJ Tucker at this point in time. Again, here you see Atlanta, they have a $25 million trade exception from the DeJounte Murray deal. I'm not sure that they're going to actually really factor in. A team like Brooklyn, I think, is more likely, though. They have a $23 million trade exception from the Mikal Bridges trade. That is something I could see definitely being utilized. And then also the Chicago Bulls, after signing and trading DeMar DeRozan to Sacramento, they opened up a little bit of flexibility for themselves. So when we go over to the actual trade machine, the first team I want to talk about is the Washington Wizards. And I think the relationship between Michael Winger, who is the president of basketball operations for the Washington Wizards, and Monument Sports, he has the ability to work with the Clippers, the franchise he used to be part of as a GM for them. He could work with them to get a deal done, help out the Clippers, and also help out his own franchise as the Wizards are in asset accumulation mode right now. So a PJ Tucker trade, again, really it comes down to this trade exception right here, this $12.402 million. This is an impressive number to have for them, an important number more so than an impressive one, in fact, to allow them to take in this $11.5 million outgoing salary that you see right here. The reason for that, again, they don't have cap space. The Wizards do not have space. No team in the NBA really right now has cap space to take in PJ Tucker's contract. So if you're looking at a salary dump, you need to find those trade exceptions. The Wizards have one. Now, with that $12.4 million, they don't have enough really to take in any other meaningful player. But what they do have is essentially another trade exception, $3.5 million. So if it went that way, for example, the Clippers could trade both Kobe Brown and PJ Tucker, as an example, not saying this will happen, but they could split this into 2 different trades. So instead of, you're seeing it right now in one trade, but you could take PJ Tucker's contract and put it into this Daniel Gafford trade exception, and you could put Kobe Brown in this Mike Muscala trade exception. So first of all, that's one of the very important things to note here. You could break this into 2 different trades if they went that way. This is assuming Kobe Brown is the cost to do business. Now maybe he isn't, so let's take him out of this trade. Is there anything in return that the Clippers could get back? They don't really have a trade exception to work with, but remember, if they do trade PJ Tucker, they would open up their own $11.5 million trade exception. So in theory, they could work with the Wizards and take back in some player, right? If that would be like Johnny Davis as a reclamation project, or Patrick Baldwin Jr. as a reclamation project, Jared Butler, former Baylor guard who maybe has a little bit of potential to grow into yet. Not sure the Clippers are really going to be thinking in that mode though. So I think this is where the deal realistically comes together. We're going to see some type of second round pick go out the door, maybe even 2 second round picks to Washington for the Wizards to just flat out eat the contract of PJ Tucker. You could throw some cash in here. That could definitely be a part of the deal as well. But the Clippers, again, you're not only, like, this is the thing, people are going to say, oh, well, the Clippers are saving money. Yes, but the other thing is you're also opening up the doorway to later use this $11.5 million trade exception in the future. Now, this isn't the best way for the Clippers to operate. Holding on to PJ Tucker would just be a better route for them, and waiting for an 11-ish, $12 million player to open up on the trade market, because at that point in time, they could go out then at that spot and use PJ Tucker's contract and then also just get the trade rules. So with a trade exception, you're stuck at directly at $11.5 million. You cannot go over that number even by $1,000, $2,000, $500,000, okay? Whereas if you're trading PJ Tucker, you'd have the 110% rule with where their current tax and apron status is. They'd have the ability to take up to an extra 10% of salary, so an extra $1.15 million of salary. So they could go up to about $12.7 million on a contract if they made a trade later instead of making this trade right now. Obviously for the Wizards, it's obvious why they would do this. Clippers, it's all about freeing money. They would get a trade exception. But again, they don't necessarily have to do that. So let's go to a team that maybe makes a little bit more sense in terms of the return that the Clippers would get. And that player has been very vocal, very open about his name being potentially on the trade block. That is Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, Dorian Finney-Smith a couple of years ago was rumored to go for 2 first-round picks. That is not the case anymore. Currently, it sounds like Dorian Finney-Smith would maybe net 1 first-round pick. He's a really good player and I think would be a really tremendous fit with the Los Angeles Clippers. I think they need more length. They need more size in their lineup. I thought Derrick Jones Jr. was a really good get. I like the addition of Chris Dunn. But they need one more forward, I think, especially after the departure of Paul George. This is where a PJ Tucker plus Kobe Brown combination I do think makes a good deal of sense. And then in here, noticing you just don't have a lot of first-round picks to give up. This is where you maybe do like a lottery-protected first to the Nets, and the Nets would maybe even send back a couple of second-round picks. They have so many picks themselves right now that they could definitely afford to do something like this. It gives the Clippers back a little bit of flexibility and improves their present-day roster, whereas the Nets get a young player in Kobe Brown. They get a long, far-out, lottery-protected first-round pick. And the Clippers get better. They get a little bit of flexibility with these couple of second-round picks. It doesn't do a lot for you, but it moves the needle just a bit maybe. The Nets get a little bit of youth in Kobe Brown, maybe a little bit of upside, former first-round pick. I know the Clippers do like him, but they already have someone like Jordan Miller as well. I'm not sure if Kobe Brown is completely essential for the Clippers moving forward, to be completely honest with you. I didn't have a first-round grade on him myself in his own draft, and he was a very back into the first-round pick, so it's not like he's someone who the Clippers are planning on building around. He is just a young core piece for them that I could see them moving in an attempt to upgrade their roster presently. Getting someone like Dorian Finney-Smith would be really, really good. And using PJ Tucker's contract to get you there. Remember, like the same way we talked about with the overall, cap holds and everything, or with the trade exceptions, like we could just flat out see, and this is true for pretty much every single team, right? We could see something like this for every team that has a trade exception large enough to harbor PJ Tucker's contract. This one is saying it doesn't work, but it's because they are hard capped at the apron. So this is one where you'd have to figure out a second trade. This would be like a 3-team deal where you'd have to send out, let me look at the roster quick. This is fun because we're kind of doing this on the fly, right? This isn't a prepped video. This is reacting to news. So This is one where like they'd have to send out some money. So even if it was just Zaire Williams, you trade him to, I don't know, like a team. Let's just add Atlanta in here as a third team, for example. The Nets give up a 2029 second-round pick to the Hawks, and the Hawks just get Zaire Williams. We'll just, send him there. So something like this works, right? I actually have Zaire going to the, I don't even know why that is like that. Zaire should be going to the Hawks in this type of situation. But something like this, right, where you salary dump, it keeps putting him to the Clippers. I don't even know. But on to the next trade. So that's away from the Nets. Let's move on to a team like Dallas, who also has this trade exception. Now, the thing is for Dallas, with the $16 million trade exception, would they want to use it for PJ Tucker? The answer is no. So I don't really think Dallas is a very likely outcome. As a landing spot, Memphis, a team that I think will be competing for a top 5 seed in the Western Conference. Does PJ Tucker really make sense here? I think the obvious answer, again, is no. The only reason a team like Memphis would be taking PJ Tucker in is I think if you're giving up some type of first-round pick compensation. I think with where the Grizzlies presently are, if they could get a first from the Clippers, it would be worth it. But I just really don't expect that to happen. So we've talked about the Wizards, we've talked about the Grizzlies and Mavericks, we've talked about the Nets. Now I think one other team, the Bulls, who have this $17.5 million trade exception, an interesting one to look at here as well. The Bulls are clearly kind of in turnover mode. They went and got Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. They let DeMar DeRozan walk in free agency on a sign and trade. So could picking up extra assets here make some sense? I think the answer to that is yes. So something like this where you trade those couple of second round picks, and a deal like this materializes pretty easily, right? Clippers get off of PJ Tucker's contract, give up a couple of second round picks to do so, frees up some money, frees up some flexibility, and they get their own trade exception back at $11.5 million. And the Bulls turn their trade exception into a couple of second round picks essentially for an expiring deal. Again, these aren't the sexiest trades, these aren't the most fun trades, but they are deals that I think are worth considering. And if we're talking about what will potentially happen with PJ Tucker, should the Clippers waive him? No. Should the Clippers just trade him in a bunch of picks to get off of him? Not really. I think holding on to his contract is probably the smartest route to go because, again, you get that little bit of extra flexibility come trade deadline season. Right now, they could just ask him, hey, look, we're going to keep paying you, or we're going to keep sending you your contract. You don't even have to worry about coming into work. You can go work out if you want. We'll probably try and trade you by the trade deadline. That's the way I would probably try and operate going forward. The only way I think it makes sense to try and push for something now is if you could get involved for a player like Dorian Finney-Smith or some type of bigger wing role player who could fill out this Clippers roster just a little bit more, give them one extra guy of depth, especially with Kawhi Leonard's injury history. Putting a player who is very, very dominant as a catch-and-shoot player, especially out of the corner, around James Harden could make some real sense. So Dorian Finney-Smith is probably the best option if they're able to get something done with Brooklyn. Otherwise, teams like the Grizzlies, Mavericks, probably not going to be looking to use their trade exception for PJ Tucker. So it really leaves the ball in the court of teams like the Wizards, the Bulls, the Hawks have that trade exception too, but I just don't know if I see them being the team to get involved here with some of their recent financial situation. I don't know if they're looking to take in even an expiring salary right now. I think they, with such a big trade exception especially, could look to wait a little bit and find something a little bit bigger. We'll wait and see what happens, but I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Sorry again for the delay with Hurricane Helene. Very thankful to be past that situation now, and also praying for all of those who also have been affected, and obviously in some ways affected more drastically than I was, even though I was without power for so long. Obviously, unfortunately, people lost their lives. So praying for them, keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.